Hello everyone, welcome to the first video of our Tamiya Ducati build. We're going to start by assembling some of the body panels with some Tamiya extra thin cement. Obviously I've already cut these parts out of the sprues, as well as cleaned them up, got all the edges off, got everything neat so I could glue it all together. Next, we're going to start to mark the mold lines on this front cowl here. This is the only piece that has any mold lines, so obviously it's the only piece that we need to remove them from. As always, I'm going to mark them with a Sharpie so I know when I'm done sanding, and I'm going to sand them off using some 600 grit Tamiya sanding sponges. And after that, I'm going to go ahead and give all the body panels a good scuff so I can get the primer to bind better so it looks better in the end. When I glued these two fuel tank pieces together, I thought I'd be able to sand out the line, but I was not. You'll see a little bit later. We have to fill it in with some putty. As a general rule, I don't like to use these nail files on any of the body panels because they are extremely coarse. But again, trying to get that mold line out without having to use the putty is ideal because the putty is kind of a hassle. But in this case, it was not working. I also want to note this tiny little piece on the end of this fender here is extremely important. There are brake lines that attach to it, so it's extremely important you don't break it like I end up doing. Again, just trying to get the line out where the two pieces meet. Same thing on this one, I really wasn't able to, so I did have to put some putty on it. And for my putty, I use Tamiya white putty. Works extremely well, but it does smell absolutely terrible. So I just use a metal spatula to apply it. I typically put it on pretty thick, so that way I have a little bit more to work with when I sand it down. Following that, on these side cowls here, there are some little tabs that need to be glued on, so I'm going to go ahead and do that before I paint them. And here we're going to drill out the brake rotors to install these rivets that come with the front fork set. So we have the recommended size drill bit and our Tamiya electric handy drill, and we're just going to drill them all out. After drilling the holes, there's still a small ridge that you need to cut off. I used a flat-bladed hobby knife, and of course always remember to never cut towards your fingers. And then a quick test fit to make sure they fit properly. And of course, while they end up looking really great, they are a huge hassle to install. There's the finished product, and of course we repeat the process on the second front rotor. Next, we're going to prime all of our sprues in preparation for assembly and painting. As always, I'm using the Tamiya Fine Surface Primer in a spray can for this. It actually works really good. It's readily available, it's fairly cheap, and it gets the job done a whole lot quicker than spraying each piece one at a time. And now we're going to start cleaning up the putty that we installed on the two cladding components, the fuel tank and the front fender. I usually start with my knife just to take off the bigger pieces, knock down the larger chunks before I start sanding and filing. When I'm filing here, I try to do it slowly, simply because I don't want to take off too much, because you can always take off more, but if you take off too much and cause a flat spot, it's extremely hard to get it back to where it should be. Explained this before, but I like to use nail files for this stuff because they are much cheaper, simply because they don't say hobby on them. Next, I'm going to do something I don't typically do, and that is glue together parts I've already primed. So I've got an older jar of Tamiya Extra Thin here. You can see there's already some primer contaminating it. Unfortunately, the Tamiya Extra Thin tends to contaminate real easily with paint, but it also cuts through the primer really well. So I'm just going to go ahead and glue these pieces together as if they weren't primed. The Tamiya will cut through the primer and they'll stick together just like they would if they were not primed. The only reason I am gluing these together after priming is because I thought it would be a little too difficult to prime everything after it was glued together. Thought it'd be a little easier to do it on the sprue, cut it out, and then glue it together. Then on this chain guard here, there is a poly cap that needs to go in it before you glue it together. And that's it for part 1. Part 2, we're going to start laying down some paint, and we'll get to see how everything works out. As always, questions, comments, concerns, please go ahead and leave a comment. If you haven't already done so, go ahead and subscribe. And again, I do have shop cards available. If you're interested, send me a message on my Instagram, and I will send one your way. Thank you. Have a great day, and we'll see you all next time.